Last year, on the 14th of March, an Indian national that had returned to Rwanda a few days earlier from Mumbai with no apparent COVID-19 symptoms when he first arrived was confirmed to have the virus despite efforts at the time to screen people coming from abroad. I first joined the COVID-19 task force in February last year when, as doctors, we began taking precautions and preparing for possibly the first case to appear, and when indeed it happened on the 14th of March, we were ready. We were scared for our own safety because around the world people were being killed by COVID, including doctors. However, we knew that this is our responsibility, and that is why we understood that it had to be us to do it. A mere day after the first case was identified, concerts, prayer gatherings and crusades, sporting activities that attracted many people at public venues and all schools had been ordered closed. Employees in both the public and private sectors were being urged to work from home whenever possible. 5 days on, Rwanda had 11 COVID-19 cases, and by the 21st of March, the country had become the first in the region to close its airport to commercial flights and its land borders, and travel between Kigali and the provinces became prohibited. Employees were now mandated to work from home because it was no longer a suggestion. With bars and regular shops selling non-essential goods now closed, the country descended into a total lockdown.
Guidelines are an example of what we mean by essential travels, and you have local government authorities in place who will be able to judge and to decide. But we should not even need these local authorities to intervene, because we want everyone to own these guidelines, because it is for the benefit for everyone. We need everyone to own these guidelines, to understand them, and to disseminate them to their families, their neighbors, and to really be part of the effort we are making to control this pandemic.
Let's talk about people that don't have access to online banking. You said among the guidelines is avoiding ATMs or banking systems. What about people that don't have access to online banking?
We are saying we should privilege online banking instead of going to banks, instead of using ATM. But we are not saying going to a bank is not allowed. Using ATM is not allowed. We are just saying you should limit these movements to banks or to any other place. We should just move really for essential reasons where there is no way to avoid this. And if you can use online banking, it's perfect because you can do it from your home.
Yes.
But if you can't, you are allowed to go to a bank. You are allowed to go to an ATM. But we would like, we would prefer that you don't go there every day. If you need to go there, let's say once a week or so. But just let's limit the movements. Let's limit the reasons for which we need to move from a place to another one.
A week after the measures came into effect, the president addressed the nation.
Tuzi neza ko ibi bihe bitoroshye byahungabanyije imibereho y'abanyarwanda benshi ndetse mu gihugu hose. Turabasaba rero ko mwihangana. Turatera intambwe nziza, ntabwo dukwiye gutezuka. Leta izakomeza gukora ibishoboka byose ngo ifashe abanyarwanda muri ibi bihe bitoroshye. Ingamba zarafashwe n'izindi zizafatwa.
With the total lockdown supposed to be lifted on the 4th of April, it was extended for another 15 days. The country would remain like that for 40 days. Afterwards, certain activities were progressively allowed to resume, and on the 18th of April, people began to be required to wear face masks when going out in public, a measure that has remained in place to this day. On the 5th of that month, the first 7 people to recover from COVID had been discharged. There are some we found here, and now we have been discharged before them. However, we are confident that they too will get to go home soon, all of them eventually. As for me, I am now going back home to Burundi. My family is waiting for me. So are my friends, all waiting to welcome me and thank God for saving me from this virus.
yandokoye mu bandi bantu bari bagwaye virus.
Twebwe ba mbere dusohotse ahangaha nk'abantu bakize iki cyorezo.
We are the first to leave this place, declared free of this pandemic. We are very happy because we did spend many days here, plus of course the time we spent traveling abroad. That's about a month away from our families. We are grateful for the way God cared for us using the team here and thus continue. And as you can see for yourselves, we have started getting positive results from those efforts.
Mukaba mubona ko bitangiye gutanga umusaruro.
COVID-19 testing continued to increase as time passed and more than 1 million people have now been tested. In June, COVID-19 measures were still in place, but in such a way as to allow the country's economy to slowly recover from the blow it had been dealt with, while efforts were being made to fight the pandemic. As July came around, the Kigali International Airport was once again receiving commercial flights. November saw a drastic change in infection figures for the worst, however, something health officials pointed out resulted from people becoming complacent. The end of 2020 saw an increase in both COVID-19 infections and fatalities, and by the 18th of January this year, with the entire country already under travel restrictions between districts, Kigali City entered its second total lockdown in less than a year. Throughout the lockdowns, the government bore the burden of feeding day laborers that could not make a living, and bitter lessons were learnt by people from all walks of life. We now buy goods wholesale by looking at pictures of them, when before we could travel abroad to China and Turkey and maybe even find other things we had not seen before. I can also say that COVID taught us what faith is, because we now walk by faith not knowing what could happen next, to be honest. We do not know what the words lockdown and curfew mean until now. These are new things to us, and they took us by surprise without really getting a chance to properly organize our finances. Spending a month at home unable to leave or work is really something we will be able to tell future generations almost as a legend. It has now been almost 2 weeks since COVID-19 vaccinations began here in Rwanda. We have made progress, but this is not a reason for people to become complacent, because not that many people have been vaccinated yet in the grand scheme of things, and in any case, the vaccines are not here to stop COVID in its tracks. It is fortunate that we are vaccinating people while infection rates are on the decline, but you know of countries that have vaccinated millions and are still going back to total lockdowns. That is why I say the battle is still fierce. On New Year's Day, the country's leadership commended the way Rwandans have handled the pandemic, saying it has proved that anything is achievable with proper planning and implementation.
Dutangiye umwaka mushya dufite icyizere kuko u Rwanda rwageze kuri byinshi, nubwo twahuye n'ibibazo bidasanzwe mu mwaka w'ibihumbi 2020. Ibi bivuze ko dushobora gukora n'ibirenze igihe iki cyorezo kizaba kitagihari. Isomo twakuye muri uyu mwaka ushize nuko iyo twitwaye neza tugashyira hamwe nta cyaduhungabanya.
Rwanda has seen more than 20,000 infections since the first case in March last year, with 18,500 recoveries and unfortunately 276 fatalities. More than 250,000 people have now been vaccinated.